Some journeys, you can measure them in kilometers or maybe altitude. But then there are those rare few, like the one we're diving into today, that are measured in something, well, something much deeper. We're going to follow the story of a trek to the Barasu Pass. And let me tell you, this is an expedition that's as much about a profound inner quest as it is a physical climb.
So take a look. This is the Borisu Pass. We're talking 5,600 meters. And at that height, it's not just a mountain pass. It's more like a gatekeeper, standing between the valleys of Uttarakhand and Himachal. It's just this colossal wall of rock and ice and myth. And get this, for years it had remained uncrossed, just waiting.
This quote, it just perfectly captures the mindset you need to even think about approaching a place like this. See, the journey was never about conquest, not at all. It was all about humility. It's this idea that you don't climb a mountain to, enrich your soul. You climb it to surrender your ego to something that's just infinitely bigger than you.
All right, so this is where our story really begins. And you can just imagine that electric feeling of a new adventure. There was this buzz in the air, a genuine excitement, and for a good reason. This was the very first group in years to even try to cross the Bakarasu Pass. I mean, the call of the unknown, it was practically screaming.
The trek kicks off by winding its way to Osla. And Osla is the last village on this side of the border. We're talking about a place that is seriously ancient. Its history stretches all the way back to the time of the Mahabharata. You can just feel the weight of all those centuries there. It's so far removed from our modern world. So before heading out into the total wilderness, the team did something really cool. They just immersed themselves in the local culture. They were actually lucky enough to be there for the evening procession of Someshwar Mahadev, who is the revered deity for 22 different villages in the area. What a perfect grounding way to start a journey that's literally heading for the heavens, right? Okay, so from Osla, the team enters the legendary Har Kidun Valley. And this is where things get really interesting. It's the point where the physical landscape and the ancient stories just completely merge. They become totally inseparable. Every single peak, every river, it has a story to tell. Suddenly, the team is just surrounded by living myths. I mean, literally. They pass the Swargarohini Peak. That's believed to be the actual stairway the Pandava brothers tried to climb to get to heaven. They're following the Supan River, and its waters carry their own local legends. In a valley like this, myth isn't just some old history story. It's in the very air you're breathing. And all this incredible beauty, it starts to raise some really fascinating questions. The author of our source material, he found himself thinking, were the Pandavas really looking for some other heaven? I mean, when they were already standing in a place this beautiful. It makes you ask, what does that quest for heaven even mean when you are already surrounded by what feels like paradise on earth? But that sense of philosophical calm, well, it doesn't last long, because as the pass itself finally comes into view, the whole tone just shifts dramatically. The challenge suddenly becomes very, very real. A psychological battle begins, and the mountain, it starts to show its truly terrifying face. And there it was. That was the moment, the first proper view of Borisu Pass. The author describes how that one sight just shattered all their excitement in an instant. And what replaced it? A profound, almost fearful humility. You've got unstable rocks, ancient ice, and that crushing 5,600-meter altitude. It was all right there, just waiting for them. The guide, he could sense the mix of awe and, let's be honest, fear in the team. And he offered these simple but really heavy words. He was basically personifying the mountain, right? He wasn't talking about it like something you conquer. He was talking about it like a powerful being whose respect you have to earn. Only then, maybe, it'll grant you passage. And look, the dangers were immediate. The path led them right through a treacherous moraine zone. Now what's that? It's basically a river of loose rocks and boulders that a glacier left behind. It is a completely chaotic landscape with the constant threat of rockfall from above, and you've got this nagging thought in the back of your head that one wrong step could send you tumbling 200 feet straight into a gorge below. And on top of all those very obvious physical dangers, there was a silent killer lurking: acute mountain sickness, or AMS. As the altitude just kept climbing, our narrator started to feel this crushing headache. And he absolutely knew that ignoring the symptoms of AMS at this height, well, that could be a fatal mistake. So this brings us to the climax of the entire journey, the final, absolutely brutal push to the summit. It's a test of physical endurance, of mental fortitude, and really it's a high-stakes gamble with life itself. Our narrator had to make a life or death decision, right then and there. Was this terrible headache the beginning of deadly AMS, which would mean he had to turn back immediately? Or was it just severe dehydration? He basically bet his life that it was dehydration. He forced himself to drink as much water as he possibly could, just hoping, praying that his self-diagnosis was the right one. So after surviving that terrifying internal battle, he had to face the external one, and it was a doozy. The final wall leading to the pass was an almost vertical 85-degree slope. And it wasn't solid rock, it was loose scree, small broken rock fragments and melting snow. I mean, that is a nightmare scenario for any climber. Every single step on this final ascent was a massive risk. The ground itself, this mix of loose rock and soil that was only held together because it was frozen, was starting to melt in the morning sun. They had to use an ice axe and ropes to literally carve out a path, all while knowing that the entire wall could just give way at any second. So right at this most dangerous point, with his body pushed to its absolute limit, the narrator found strength, but not in his muscles. He found it in his spirit. He describes how the chant Shiva Omkar was just running continuously in his mind, like it was the only thing holding his consciousness together as he fought his way up that wall. And then he made it, the summit. After all of that struggle, all the fear and the pain, he was there. He talks about this feeling of complete oneness with nature, this profound spiritual clarity, like he was in the presence of the divine. This wasn't just a pretty view. This was a reward for an act of pure faith. But the mountain, it seems, wasn't finished with them just yet. On the way down, a bag with their entire kitchen setup, everything, slipped and just plunged into a seemingly bottomless crevasse. Gone forever. After everything they'd been through, now they couldn't even cook. But the narrator didn't see it as a loss. He saw it as an offering, like the mountain was taking its due. So, the summit has been reached, but the journey isn't over, not by a long shot. Now comes the final leg, the descent, the emotional release, and that long, slow, reflective walk back towards the world of people and roads and comfort. And this view here, it just captures such a powerful emotion. I mean, think about it. After days of seeing nothing but rock, ice, and sky, this was the very first sight of civilization. Just a distant road. The author says tears just started welling up in his eyes. It was this flood of relief and accomplishment all at once. But, the true emotional peak of the whole trip, it came completely unexpectedly. At an Indo-Tibetan border police post, a soldier checked their permits, shook their hands, and gave them this incredible validation saying, "This pass has been opened after 4 years. You people have opened it. Jai Hind." To get that kind of recognition from a soldier serving on that remote border, that felt like the real summit. And in the end, it's funny, right? More than the physical act of climbing, more than even those spiritual moments at the top, it was this simple, powerful human connection that left the deepest mark. It's just a reminder, I think, that sometimes the greatest journeys aren't really about reaching a specific place. They're about what we find in ourselves and in other people along the way.